There's a book I read at 25 that gave me the courage to own who I already was. That book is Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. I didn't pick it up again for 11 years. And last month, going back to it during one of the toughest stretches I've had in a while, it gave me something completely different. Not the fire that I was expecting, but something much quieter. And I think I ended up needing that more. Writing Down the Bones was published in 1986 and has sold about 1 million copies. Natalie Goldberg is a writer and a teacher whose whole approach is rooted in Zen Buddhism. She doesn't approach writing as a skill to be mastered, but rather she approaches it as a practice to be lived as part of your everyday life and something that changes the way you see the world. When I first read this book, I was 25 and I was in the first feverish phases of world building for what became my first completed novel. Anyway, I had just done this short course on creative writing and the tutor recommended this book. And once I read it, I just felt on fire. I felt ready to own the fact that I'm a writer, ready to proclaim it to the world. And it was a decision that eventually led me to pursue a master's in creative writing and publishing. So Goldberg gave me the language for what I was already living and already feeling. And more than a decade later, I came back to it. And what I found wasn't permission to be who I am, because I already had that. It was something much gentler, much steadier, and it starts here. So today, I want to share the 3 things that I got from this book. First off, early in the book, Goldberg says, my rule is to finish a notebook, simply to fill it up. That's the practice. My ideal is to write every day, and I say this is my ideal. I'm careful not to pass judgment or create anxiety if I didn't do that. No one lives up to his ideal. No one lives up to their ideal. That's something quietly radical, that's something really refreshing, because most writing advice, even the good stuff, it carries this undercurrent of discipline, You should be writing, you should be protecting your practice, you should treat it like a craft, something to be mastered and perfected. And Goldberg gives you an alternative, a messy one that adapts and evolves as you do. And she holds the ideal of writing every day and releases the guilt of it simultaneously. Like she says, it's okay if you don't, but you should try. The basic unit of her practice is the timed writing exercise. You set a timer, 10 minutes, 20, whatever, and follow 6 simple rules. Keep your hand moving. Don't cross anything out. Don't worry about spelling or grammar. Lose control. Don't think and go for the jugular. If something comes up that feels scary or makes you feel vulnerable, just dive into it. That's where the energy is. What I love about this is the underlying philosophy. She's not asking you to write well during your practice. She's asking you to write in a simple, raw way. Not to make it performative, just to make it expressive. And a practice, by definition, is something you want to return to, not something you perfect. She's also wonderfully unbothered about tools. She says, keep it simple, keep it cheap. Don't look for the ideal notebook. Don't have a perfectly arranged space, just write. I'm totally guilty of this. I want to write in a space that inspires me, a space that I feel safe in, a little creative haven where basically the whole world gets put on the back seat. And I feel privileged enough to have created this kind of space for myself. But I appreciate what she's saying. She's simplifying things. She's taking the pressure off of perfect and bringing it to the humility of a practice. The book follows a deliberately loose format. Some chapters say write in your little creative studio, while others say go to a cafe, go to a restaurant. That's actually part of the reason why I'll be writing in different locations this month as my experiment. Not just as an experiment in productivity, but as a way of doing what Goldberg is pointing at. Staying flexible, staying open, letting the practice breathe. Her point is that rigidity is the enemy. One option isn't wrong and the other one right. Every moment is different and we need to remain fluid while we live through them. I used to do these timed writing exercises around the same time that I used to do morning pages, and I stopped years ago. And then reading this again made me think that maybe it's time to pick them up. I think it's time to let myself write messy and tap into that side of my brain, rather than just focusing and writing my manuscript and trying to write well, or as well as can be for a 0 with the first draft. Do any of you write like this? I'd love to hear about your experience with stream of consciousness writing. And Goldberg does something that most craft books don't. She doesn't just stop at practice, she goes underneath it, and she wants to know what's actually keeping you from sitting down And her answer isn't what I was expecting. There's a moment in the book, and she addresses it in the audiobook too, which she narrates herself and adds a lot of little beautiful, funny, humorous insights from having many, many more years of experience with writing than she did when she actually wrote this book. Because I think the audiobook was narrated a couple of years ago, whereas the book is quite a few years old now. Anyway, when she describes this group of students who studied with her multiple times, writers who travel from across the country, across the world to go study with her, she goes around the room and she says, "What do you need right now?" And they start listing their reasons that they aren't writing. They say things like, "I don't have time. My life is just chaos. My job, my fear, I'm scared." And she looks at them and she says, "You know what to do. Just pick up a pen and write." And she sees their faces light up. And she's like, "You came all the way here just to hear that? You already knew it." And they say, "Yeah, because this time they believed it. This time they believed the excuses that their brain was coming up with. And they trusted that this time just writing wouldn't be enough." And then when they heard her speak, they realized that, maybe just writing is enough. Goldberg calls this whole habit that we have of coming up with excuses and reasons not to write and believing in our brain, the monkey mind. The part of your brain that's endlessly creative about reasons not to write. And her response is not discipline. It's not a rigid schedule or a word count or a system. It's something much closer to exasperation and affection. She's not angry at the monkey mind. She just doesn't buy it. She doesn't believe it. She says, don't listen to doubt. It leads no place but to pain and negativity. Have a tenderness towards your writing and a sense of humor and a deep patience. I've been swamped. My responsibilities are a mile long and feel emotionally more demanding than the Divine Comedy or than Alchemized. But when it's time for me to run an experiment, I sit at the keyboard and I write. And that should tell me something, but somehow I keep getting stuck believing my monkey brain. And yeah, the things it's telling me are all real and true and valid and important. But there's something to Goldberg's version of shush up and write that makes it feel simpler and more doable. And usually hearing that phrase feels more like a rebuke, but Goldberg's version is more like a friend putting their hand on your shoulders and just saying, you got this. You already know this. You've always known this. Just go back to it. Hands on keyboard, fingers moving. Right. She also talks about props, these little tricks that help you hack your mind into another state, and things like an unlit cigarette hanging from your lips in a no-smoking cafe, or a borrowed leather jacket or a beret, anything that lets you approach the page from a slightly different angle or a self that you don't usually inhabit. There's something really playful about that. And the point isn't the prop itself, it's that sometimes you need a small act of strangeness, of weirdness, to break the crust of your ordinary thinking. Everything Goldberg said so far is practical, it's useful, it's the kind of advice that you can act on tomorrow, but none of it is why I think this book is more than a craft book. It's a third thing, and that's the thing I didn't understand at 25 at all when I first read this. The book doesn't tell you how to write, it tells you why writing is worth your life and worth your time. There's this chapter called A Little Sweet. Let me find it. There we go. And basically in this chapter, Goldberg talks about a Jewish tradition that when a young boy reads his first words in the Torah, he's given honey. So he'll always associate learning with sweetness. And she says it should be the same with writing, make it your friend. She says it'll never desert you, though you may desert it many times. I had to pause when I got to that line because the first time I read this, I didn't need it. I wasn't someone who had deserted writing. I was someone who was running toward it at full speed. But this time I understood exactly what she meant. Over the last decade, I've abandoned writing and come back to it time and time and time again. I've honored the page and hated the experience. And more recently, I keep letting my writing time be the first thing I sacrifice from my calendar in order to get everything else done. Goldberg talks about writing as a thing that brings her back to herself. She comes home after a long day and says, "Natalie, you know what you need to do." And when she listens, it often softens her. It makes her feel more like her genuine, vulnerable self. Even if she writes just the details of rush hour in the morning, living it again gives her peace. And that's not craft advice, that's a philosophy for life. Writing is everything, unconditional. There is no separation between writing, life, and the mind. In the audiobook, she adds that painting feeds her writing, cooking feeds it, wandering feeds it. The older she gets, the more she believes that her time is her greatest commodity, and she feels wealthy when she has the luxury of wandering slowly down a street and noticing things. And I feel that too. I feel that so deeply. And she says something that I want you to sit with. She says, writers live twice. They go through life at the same speed as everybody else, but then there's this other part of them that's trained and it's waiting. It's the one that sits back down and sees life again. It's the one that goes back out when it's raining with a notebook and watches puddles fill up. And that's it. That's why we do this. What I took from this book this time isn't courage. It's a reminder that honoring the things that sustain you isn't indulgent. It's how you stay whole. It's how you stay kind to yourself, and from that to everyone else around you. That's what a writing practice is for, if you let it be. Writing Down the Bones isn't the book that's going to teach you plot or structure or how to build a scene. It's a book that's going to remind you why you started writing in the first place. That the practice itself, messy, imperfect, interrupted as it always will be, isn't just a means to an end, it's a journey. And Natalie Goldberg wrote this book when she was 36, the same age I am now. And she says in the audiobook that you need a really, really deep desire, a burning to write something, to write a novel, because it takes a lot out of you. And I believe her, because lately I've been so depleted. I've been totally running on empty. And still, the moment I feel like I have just this little bit more capacity, this little bit more energy and space and time and something to give, I come back to the story I'm writing, to this story that's just burning inside me and itching to get told. And that tells me something about it too. If you've read this book, I'd love to know what you took away from it for your writing practice and for how you're feeling right now. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next week, where we're going to talk about the conditions that spark creativity. Trust in what you love, continue to do it, and it'll take you where you need to go. I'm working on it. I'll see you next week.